먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Coming up on Arirang News. South Korea has reportedly held off suspending the licenses of doctors who are still on their walkout following President Yoon Suk-yeol's order to deal with them flexibly. Meanwhile, a growing number of medical professors nationwide are still submitting their resignation letters. Visiting where President Yoon calls what will be a global semiconductor hub, Yongin City, for another policy discussion with citizens. He vows to create the Semiconductor Expressway and open a Maester High School. North Korean leader's powerful sister Kim Yo-jong says Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has proposed a summit with the regime as soon as possible. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We begin with the government reportedly delaying medical license suspensions of trainee doctors, which were supposed to take effect tomorrow. While the government aims for a constructive dialogue with the medical community, they remain at odds over the proposed expansion of the country's medical school quota. Our Song Yoo-jin starts us off.
The Korean government has reportedly postponed the suspension of medical licenses for trainee doctors who've walked out in protest of increasing the med school admission quota. Suspensions were set to start on Tuesday, but an unnamed official from the presidential office told Yonhap News on Monday that things are on hold temporarily. The official said the government cannot carry out license suspensions while trying to engage in dialogue with the medical community. Over the past several days, the government has been softening its hardline stance. On Sunday, President Yoon Suk-yeol asked Prime Minister Han Duk-soo for flexible measures to resolve the dispute and establish a constructive council for consulting with doctors. Health Minister Cho Kyu-hong on Monday also described such efforts by the government.
The government has immediately begun working towards establishing discussions with the medical community and will come up with a day for both sides to sit down for talks as soon as possible.
But the minister made it clear that the government will stick to its original plan to increase the med school quota by 2,000 from next year.
We will certainly complete the goal of the expanding medical school admissions for the first time in 27 years. We ask for your support until the end.
The medical community says it's willing to talk, but with conditions.
Unless the government withdraws its plan to increase the medical school quota and allocation, this crisis cannot be resolved. We are ready to discuss all pending issues in front of the public, but I don't believe withdrawing the plan equals to eliminating the expansion entirely.
But it appears there's still a long road ahead for dialogue. Professors from most of the country's 40 medical schools began submitting their resignations on Monday in solidarity with trainee doctors who have been in a standoff with the government since last month. Some schools witnessed the majority of their professors resigning, including 433 out of 770 at Ulsan University. While they've been covering for the trainee doctors, the Medical Professors Association of Korea announced on Monday morning that professors who continue to work even after submitting their resignations will start reducing the number of outpatient appointments to focus on intensive or emergency care. They'll also cut back their weekly working hours to the legal maximum of 52 due to excessive workloads. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
Visiting the chip stronghold of city of Yongin today for another round of policy discussions, the president says new facilities will be centered on the city for a mega semiconductor cluster. Our Oh Soo-young has the details.
President Yoon Suk-yeol has promised new homes, roads and urban facilities to support a mega semiconductor cluster centered on Yongin City in Gangwon-do Province. This came on Monday as he held the 23rd edition of his series of public policy discussions with citizens. Returning to Yongin, where he held his first policy talk on building a semiconductor mega cluster in the wider province, Yoon laid out plans to scale up the quality of work and life in the city through supportive infrastructure projects. as chip giants Samsung and SK Hynix invest some 500 trillion won or $372 billion into the city as the axis of the semiconductor belt. According to the government's estimates, new residents and commuters are expected to flood in to top 1.5 million in the near future.
용인이 이렇게 커 나가기 위해서는 행정, 교통, 주거를 비롯해서 민생과 직결된 인프라를 확실하게 구축하는 것이 가장 중요합니다.
This includes a semiconductor expressway stretching across the cities of Yongin, Hwasong and Ansong. Yoon also said the national highway Route 45 will be expanded, along with improved roads and railway lines connecting the provincial cities to enable an easier commute. To upgrade urban livelihoods for new city dwellers, Yongin will create a residential and cultural complex town along with smaller townships to provide quality housing and amenities for the younger generations and senior citizens. A new semiconductor Meister High School will also open in Yongin to foster a local talent pool for the surrounding chip industry. To facilitate these plans, the government will push to enact a law on special cities to give them more decision-making authority for their respective development projects.
아울러 시립박물관과 시립예술관 설립에 관한 중앙정부의 권한을 지역으로 대폭 이관해서 자유롭게 설립할 수 있도록 하고 청년들이 용인에서 문화예술 기량을 마음껏 펼치고 창작 기회를 누릴 수 있도록 함과 아울러서 시민들의 문화예술 접근권도 높이겠습니다.
Yongin, along with Changwon, Suwon and Goyang, have been designated as special cities with more than 1 million residents. Last year, Yongin was selected as a candidate site to build a national industrial complex and became part of the government's plan to foster a 21 million square metre semiconductor mega cluster across Gangwon-do Province. The cluster is expected to be the largest in the world by 2047 and capable of producing 7.7 million wafers per month by the year 2030. Ocean Arirang News.
On the trade front, the government will provide trade insurance to domestic companies to help achieve this year's annual export value target of $700 billion. At a meeting held by the Trade Ministry on Monday, the government pledged to inject 255 trillion won or $190 billion into key export sectors, including batteries, semiconductors, and ships. In particular, it aims to provide $67 billion to small and medium-sized enterprises that have been experiencing prolonged high interest rates. The government will also enhance the competitiveness of microelectric vehicles and the defense industry. Shifting gears, North Korean leader's powerful sister Kim Yo-jong says Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has proposed a summit with the regime as soon as possible. But she also warns that an attempt to resolve the issue of Japanese abductees in North Korea would be seen as a bid for popularity. Meanwhile, Kishida mentions that regarding the possible summit, nothing has been decided. Our Peunji reports.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's powerful sister Kim Yo-jong has said Japan's prime minister has conveyed hopes of a summit at an early date. In a statement on Monday released by the regime's state-run news agency, she said improving their bilateral relations depends on Japan's political determination, and that there will be no breakthroughs as long as the Kishida administration brings up the issue of Japanese citizens abducted to North Korea. When asked about the report, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said in a parliamentary session on Monday that he has always thought a summit would be important to resolve various issues.
As I've said before, to solve the abduction problem and other North Korean issues, a summit is crucial. I have been working directly on realizing this with North Korea through various channels.
One expert says North Korea's aim to pressure Japan indicates that the two sides have not yet been able to reach an agreement.
It seems that there has been communication between North Korea and Japan, but they have not been able to reach a meaningful agreement. North Korea appears to be using a mixed strategy aimed at pressuring Japan to make a political decision.
Kim Yo-jong's latest comments come a month after she said North Korea is open to enhancing ties with Tokyo, even inviting Kishida to Pyongyang. Pundits say North Korea aims to use the summit to weaken the trilateral partnership between Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington, and eventually use the meeting as a stepping stone for a summit with the United States. Japan is said to hope that the summit can act as a way of increasing Kishida's approval rating by resolving the abduction issue, which has been a main obstacle in its relations with North Korea. In 2002, North Korea acknowledged that it had kidnapped 13 Japanese in the 1970s and 1980s to train spies in the Japanese language and culture. The regime allowed 5 of them to return to Japan that year, but said the others had died. But Japan says there were a total of 17 Japanese citizens and continues to claim that Pyongyang has yet to provide any acceptable explanation. If the summit takes place, it will be the first time in more than 20 years that the leaders of North Korea and Japan are meeting since 2002. 배은지, 아리랑 뉴스.
In Russia, Friday's terror attack at a concert hall in Moscow has killed more than 130 people. President Putin insinuates involvement by Ukraine over 4 suspected gunmen, against which Kyiv slams Putin. Lee Seung-jae has more.
4 gunmen appeared before a Russian court on Sunday, charged over the terrorist attack on the Crocus City concert hall in Moscow Friday night that left at least 137 dead. According to Russia's TASS news agency, all 4 gunmen were identified as citizens of Tajikistan and were remanded in custody for 2 months. The court released photos of the suspects, with one appearing to have a black eye, while another was seen in a wheelchair. The 4 gunmen are facing charges of a terror attack committed by a group of individuals, resulting in a person's death. Aside from the 4 individuals suspected of carrying out Friday's terror attack, 7 others have also been arrested for their possible involvement. ISIS claimed responsibility for the attack, which it said was against Christians. And after Russian President Vladimir Putin hinted at possible involvement by Ukraine on Saturday, the terror group released graphic body cam footage of the attackers on social media channels.
Regarding the investigation of this crime and results of operational search actions, I can now say the following. All 4 of the actual performers of the act of terror, all those who shot and killed people, were found and detained. They tried to hide and were moving in the direction of Ukraine. There, according to the preliminary data, they had a crossing of the border prepared from the Ukrainian side.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky slammed Putin and others in Moscow for linking the terror attacks to Kyiv, saying that the Russian leader was more concerned over blaming the attack on Ukraine rather than reassuring his own citizens. Meanwhile, Russia observed a national day of mourning on Sunday for the victims who died in the attacks. Friday's attack is now the deadliest IS-claimed terror attack on European soil and the deadliest attack by any group in Russia since the 2004 Beslan siege. South Korea's foreign ministry on Saturday offered condolences to the victims and their families. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Also on the international front, Israel has reportedly accepted a U.S. proposal on the size of hostage prisoner exchange with Hamas. Yoon has details.
Israel on Sunday agreed to a U.S. proposed prisoner hostage exchange deal and is waiting for a response from Hamas, which could take 1 to 3 days. If Hamas agrees to the proposal, it means Israel would release around 700 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for 40 Israeli hostages. According to CNN, 100 of the 700 Palestinians to be exchanged are currently serving life sentences for killing Israeli nationals. The proposal was put forward by U.S. Central Intelligence Agency Director William Burns during a visit to Qatar, where he helped Qatari and Egyptian officials mediate talks between Hamas and Israel. The director of Israel's Mossad intelligence agency, David Barnea, has also been in Doha twice in the past week for the indirect negotiations. Earlier this month, Israel described Hamas's proposal of releasing 700 to 1,000 Palestinian prisoners as ridiculous and absurd. But Israeli state broadcaster Khan News reported that Israel is now ready to make significant compromises to have abductees return home. Meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council on Friday failed to pass a resolution proposed by the U.S. that called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza as a part of a hostage deal. Despite 11 of the 15 council members voting in favor of the resolution, Russia and China exercised their veto powers. Russia's ambassador to the UN spoke before the vote, where he called on members to go against the resolution, calling it exceedingly politicized, adding that it contains measures that would allow Israel to launch a military operation in Rafah. But the U.S. ambassador to the UN said that Russia and China vetoed the resolution for cynical and petty reasons, saying that Russia was putting politics over progress.
But once again, Russia put politics over progress. Russia, who has carried out an unprovoked war on its neighbor, has the audacity and the hypocrisy to throw stones when it lives in a glass house itself. So let's be honest, for all the fiery rhetoric, we all know that Russia and China are not doing anything diplomatically to advance a lasting peace or to meaningfully contribute to the humanitarian response effort.
She added that the two countries opposed the resolution simply because it was penned by the U.S. and criticized both countries for not condemning Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel. 이은진, Arirang News.
In other news, President Yoon has wished Princess of Wales Kate Middleton, who recently announced her cancer diagnosis, a quote, full and speedy recovery. President Yoon posted the message on X, formerly known as Twitter, on Monday, saying his thoughts are with the royal family and added that he and the First Lady still remember the warm hostility they were given when visiting London for a state visit last November. On the silver screen, Korean thriller Exuma has become this year's first local production to hit 10 million in ticket sales. Our Kim Bo-kyung has more on what this means for the Korean film market.
The first Korean movie to surpass 10 million admissions at theaters this year. Occult thriller Exuma reached the milestone on Sunday morning, just 32 days after its release on February 22nd. The release of a big competitor, the Hollywood blockbuster Dune Part 2, around a week after Exuma hit the cinemas, made people wonder if it could reach the 10 million mark at all. But there was nothing to worry about, as the movie has hung on to the top spot at the local box office ever since its premiere. Directed by Jang Jae-hyun, who has been pioneering the so-called Korean occult genre with his previous films The Priest and Savaha the Sixth Finger, the film stars veteran actors Choi Min-sik and Kim Go-eun. The supernatural mystery unfolds when a team comprised of a shaman, a feng shui expert, and a mortician are asked to relocate the tomb of a wealthy person in the U.S. While everyone feels a common sense of dread when it comes to graves, the director said he wanted to add some Korean elements to this.
I thought adding uniquely Korean elements revolving around shamanism and feng shui would serve as a useful plot device in telling the story.
And this worked out well. The film has become the 32nd to attract more than 10 million moviegoers in Korea and the 5th since COVID-19, following the Roundup, Avatar: The Way of Water, The Roundup: No Way Out, and 12/12 The Day. In terms of Korean movies, it is the 23rd one to exceed the 10 million mark in ticket sales. And it's all the more meaningful for the director, as this is the first movie in the genre to reach such a milestone. With Exuma surpassing 10 million ticket sales, some suggest this is a sign of a full recovery of Korea's film industry. However, one expert says it is a bit early to say that.
It is great to hear that Exuma is doing so well, but it is also true that much attention was solely focused on Exuma. Moviegoers have become hard to attract as they go to the theaters only when there are films they want to watch. So it is quite premature to say that theaters have fully recovered.
With the latest installment of South Korea's mega-hit crime-action franchise, The Roundup, to be released in late April, eyes are on whether the Korean film industry will show significant recovery signs then. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
There's a special wedding event here in South Korea for those who are financially struggling as part of efforts to better embrace them. Our Choi Soo-hyung follows the story of a couple who fled from the north.
The groom and the bride bow to each other. After 6 years, Mr. Il-dok and Miss Park Kyo-sim finally had the wedding they had always wanted. Their faces lit up with bright smiles. Monday's wedding was made even more special with the traditional matrimonial ceremony being held in Korea House in central Seoul. Both the bride and groom are defectors from North Korea. Park fled North Korea in 2011 and settled in South Korea in 2018. But she struggled a lot, living as a single mother. A year later, she met Lee and they formed a family, having 2 more children and sharing a common bond as North Korean defectors.
I got married because I wanted to be by his side. I support him whenever we struggle or are affected by illness.
However, due to financial difficulties, they couldn't even dream of holding a wedding ceremony.
My wife really wanted the wedding. Overall, everyone helped us enormously in everything. So we're really grateful. Thank you so much.
The South Korean government is actively supporting vulnerable families, including defectors like Miss Park and Mr. Lee. As part of such support, the Cultural Heritage Administration and Korea House provide a traditional wedding ceremony and first birthday party free of charge to those in financial difficulties. These free ceremonies, including hair and makeup, dress and a reception, will be provided weekly until November 4th.
I hope that South and North Korea can become one, just like the meaning of a marriage becoming one. That's why we invited them first. It would be meaningful for defectors, our brothers and sisters, to be the first to have this traditional wedding ceremony.
Korea House Director Kim said they plan to expand the service next year to provide more people with opportunities and thus promote the beauty of Korean tradition. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
And as part of efforts to protect and promote our intangible cultural practices, special arts and craft classes are being offered to the public by certified experts. Our Moon Hae-ryun covers this campaign.
윗부분에서 아래서 위로 이렇게 집어넣어요. 꽃잎처럼. 단단하게 균형이 잡힌 거, 미연이 다 비슷비슷해야 동글동글하게 찌그러지지 않은 연봉이 되겠죠.
The lotus knot is one of the most basic knots in traditional Korean decorative knotting, known as medupjang. Though it's a basic knot, it is not easy. In order to get the shape, participants need individual help.
Close enough is not enough. The focus is on learning accurate movements in the hand, which with a lot of practice becomes each crafter's own.
Classes are being held for 14 kinds of traditional crafts, including decorative knotting, wood crafts, metal crafts, and ornamental painting. Scheduled to be held until the end of the calendar year, these classes are open for the general public with 3 levels: beginner, research, and professional. But with huge popularity, some of the courses fill up on the day that registration opens.
I wanted to be able to make it myself. I wanted to make something traditional that suits my style.
What is most appealing about these courses is that the crafts are being taught by transferees of national intangible cultural heritages. These crafts professionals pass on traditional cultural craft skills that are challenging, which keeps the apprentices inspired. I'm going up to the research level. I get a lot of ideas. I get these ideas from what is traditional and incorporate modern craft elements into the work. Exhibitions of the students' graduation works display their outstanding artistic skills and talent. As enthusiasm increases for traditional culture, more people are becoming interested in learning traditional crafts. In fact, there is a significant shortage of institutions that hold these classes compared to demand for them, where there are people that travel to Seoul from different regions across the country to take the classes. This means more support is needed from the government level to further expand the traditional cultural arts industry. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Unlike the warm and sunny weekend we had, spring rain has been falling today. On top of that, the wind is strong, so the weather is feeling colder than actual temperatures. With the drop in temperatures, it will rain all over the country until tomorrow morning. As for the amount of rain, up to 80 millimeters or more in the mountainous areas of Jeju Island and 40 to 50 in Yeongdong, Gangwon-do Province and the southern coast. There's also a possibility of loud and strong thunderstorms and gusts on the southern coast and Jeju Island. In addition, there will be places in the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do Province where up to 15 centimeters or more of snow will fall, with a preliminary heavy snow warning issued. Due to the nationwide spring rain, temperatures tomorrow morning will fall back to the levels of previous years. It will be 5 degrees lower than this morning at 5 degrees Celsius in Seoul and Daejeon. Daily highs in Daegu will move up to 13, Gyeongju 9 degrees Celsius. The temperature is expected to exceed the previous year's level all week, so it will be relatively warm. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. Well, that is all for this newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 10 p.m. with the AI headline news. Hope everyone has a great start to the week.
Completely new